Assalamu alaikum Facebook fam. I'm Kaba Kashif Muhammad, LLRC, Light and Life Rebuilding Center, a center of hope and salvation for all nations. And this is part 4. This is part 4 of my awakening speech, A Nation on the Rise. This is part 4 of the awakening, A Nation on the Rise speech. Okay, now where I left off at, family, and I left off in Matthew chapter 2, verse 13 through 17. Okay, I explained to y'all that an angel appeared to Joseph in a dream and told Joseph to take Mary and her child and flee into Egypt. Egypt symbolizes those conflicting emotions again. Egypt symbolizes the ways of the white race and their conflicting emotions that's dictating the earth. Egypt symbolizes the white man's religion. The white man's religion is those conflicting emotions of envy, hate, greed, lust, violence. All the body of emotions, which is the lower part of the black man, which is that brown germ that was grafted about the black nation. Egypt symbolizes that last stage of darkness. Egypt symbolizes that third stage, which is the Caucasian race, that body of conflicting emotions. That's the white man and his religion. The religion of the black man is universal law, righteous creative energy, the will of Allah. That's where we got the nature to connect with. That's the essence of every black man, woman, and child on this earth, has the nature to connect with universal law, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the universe. That's where the power of God dwells at. This is the power. And that's our religion, our way of life rather. But we have to come through the universal law as a religion. We have to grasp the will of Allah in order to extract power of our own. We have to come through a body of knowledge, which is the will of Allah, which is the universal law. That's the religion of the black nation. The religion of the white nation is those conflicting emotions, our lower self. When we disconnected from our power, all we hear is just material matter, the darkness of ignorance. That body of conflicting emotions, that's all we are when we disconnected from our spirituality. Now let us move on. So now, Joseph arose, and it says when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night. Daniel seen a child in the night vision. Matthew seen a child coming where the sun, moon, and stars was taken away from the earth, where Islam was taken away from the earth, and the earth was dark. Jonah seen the child. Jonah was a child that was in the belly of the beast, but rose about the belly of the beast. Rose from among those conflicting emotions into the light of spirituality. Rose from among the spiritually dead into the universal law, which is Islam, and went to preaching Islam, awakening other people in Nineveh. So now it says that. So now when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. So we see a similarity in Daniel, Matthew, in Matthew chapter 2, where Mary and her child had to flee to Egypt. Now let's go to Revelation 12, 1 through 7 again. Now it says that And there appeared in heaven a great one in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon on her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. This is the woman, Master Paul Muhammad, the white man that God cleaned up and took away all the wickedness about him and instilled the universal law, a portion of the universal law, to give to the people in America. Remember I showed y'all in the book of Ezekiel chapter 16, when he came and seen us in a bad condition. This is the woman that God cleaned up to bring forth a word to the people, to bring forth universal law that would connect the black nation back into their spirituality, back into the essence and the power of their own being, which is Islam. So now there appeared a woman in heaven, which is Master Paul Muhammad, which is the solid white man. He's called a woman in the Bible because he's about to give spiritual birth. He's about to give the universal law that God instilled into his mind to bring to the people after God cleaned them up. Because the white man don't have the nature to connect with the universal law. But being that Allah possesses all power, Allah cleaned the white man up. A solid Caucasian white man, which is the lower self of the black man. Genetically deficient white man that does not have the power to connect with righteous creative energy and build a civilization of peace, harmony, and tranquility. It ain't in the white nation. It ain't in their nature. Because they genetically are weak. They got weaker as the grafting process went on. The people got weaker mentally, spiritually, and physically. It came from a solid black man and to the white man. So now let us move on. So now the woman was clothed with the sun, moon, and stars. So God cleaned the white man up. Took a portion of the evil thinking out of his mind and instilled a portion of the universal law into his mind. A solid white man, although the nature was that of conflicting emotions. Allah brought his conflicting emotions to a standstill for a while. Allah brought the waves and smoothed the waves out into that white man. Because that's all white people is a bunch of conflicting emotions. There's no spirituality to smooth those conflicting emotions out. So the power of Allah went into that white man, smoothed it out because Allah possesses all power. Smoothed it out so that the white man can perceive a portion of his universal law and use that universal law to bring forth give birth to a child that was going to be the ruler. So now, this woman was pregnant with a child. Not a physical pregnancy, but a spiritual pregnancy. Now, there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And this tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her 1,260 days. Now we're dealing with two women here. We're dealing with the teacher of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Master Paul Muhammad, with style as a woman that's about to give spiritual birth to a child that is a man-child, that is to rule the universe, that is to bring salvation, come into a clouds of heaven. Come with the clouds of heaven, which is universal law, and bring that the universal law, use that universal law as the salvation for all nations. So there was one woman that was pregnant with a man-child. He's called a man-child because this child is to come in the clouds of heaven, which is universal law, which symbolizes a man, that stands as a man. Okay, the man symbolizes the universal law. When you come in the universal law, now you a man now. You no longer are infinite knowledge. Okay, you done grew up, you done evolved into spirituality through that universal law. Now you a man. Now when you're a child, you use an infinite knowledge. You only just starting to grow. So the woman was to give birth to a child of infinite knowledge, but yet and still this infinite knowledge was to grow into a man. A man that was to grasp that universal law and sit as king and rule the nations with a rod of iron. So this is a man-child that this woman was pregnant, was to give spiritual birth to. Now, this child, after this woman, Master Muhammad, laid that universal law down, he taught it to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave it to us to give birth to a man-child. Now, when that universal law came into the ears of that child, now this child becomes a woman. Again, this child becomes a woman, and is about to give the fullness, the entire universe, the proper expoundment and exegesis of that same universal law to a people that have been held in captivity. He is to use that key to unlock the prisons of the minds of these black babies out here that's being held in spiritual bondage. He is to become a woman itself. This child is to become a woman that's about to get spiritual birth, but this child had to flee into the wilderness. This child had to flee and hide. It says right here, it says that, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman, now here go the child now. The child becomes a woman now that's about to get spiritual birth. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared of God. So now, it's the same thing. If we go back to Matthew, when Mary and her child fled into the wilderness. We go back to Matthew. We go back to Matthew chapter 2, verse 14. And when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. So an angel came in a dream of Joseph and told him to rise and take the child and her mother and flee into Egypt. And be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod would seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose and took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. Okay, Egypt symbolizes the wilderness of sin, that body of conflicting emotions. So now we got a Revelation chapter 12 saying that this woman was to give birth to a man-child, and then once the man-child came into the world, once the man-child came into the knowledge, this child becomes a woman that had to flee and had to hide in the wilderness. Joseph had to take Mary and her child, and flee in Egypt, the wilderness of sin. Daniel seen the child in the night vision, the wilderness of sin. At a time of darkness, a time where conflicting emotions was dictating the earth, a dark time. Matthew seen where the sun, moon, and stars was taken away from the earth, and Islam was dried up on the earth, and that body of conflicting emotions was dictating the earth. It was a time of darkness, wilderness of sin. But yet and still, the child came with the universal law. He came in the clouds of heaven. So the scripture says that after the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had prepared a place prepared to God, that they should feed them the 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven when Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought against his angels and prevailed not. Okay, now, after the child in Revelation chapter 12, Revelation the whole chapter 12 says that after the child went into the wilderness, had to flee into Egypt for a while, then the child rose up out of Egypt. He came up out the wilderness of sin and went to war. Went to war with the dragon. Went to war with the wickedness. Went to war with evil. Daniel seen the child in the night vision at a time of darkness. The child rose up out the dark and was coming in the clouds of heaven with universal law, universal will of Allah, and using that universal law to fight against the wickedness and raise up a people that was spiritually dead. Matthew seen a time where the sun, moon, and stars were taken away from Islam, was taken away from the earth, but yet and still the child was coming in the clouds of heaven with the universal law, to use the universal law as a weapon to fight against evil and wake up the minds of the people. This is the Savior. All this is connected. All this is connected. Daniel, Matthew, Jonah. Jonah was in the belly of the beast, in the wilderness of sin, the darkness, night vision. Jonah was in the belly of the beast for 3 days and 3 nights, living in the world of sin. If we go back to Jonah, let's go back to Jonah again. Jonah. Now, Jonah chapter 1 verse 17. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord out of the fish's belly, the belly of the beast, and said and cried by reason after mine affliction unto the Lord. And he heard me. Out of the belly of hell he cried, and thou heardest my voice. For thou hast cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods compassed me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then I said, I am cast out of thy sight. Yet will I look again toward thy holy temple. That universal law, that clouds of heaven. The clouds of heaven that Daniel seen them coming up when he came up out of the night vision. When Matthew seen the sun, moon, and stars were taken away from the earth, and the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. Now, Jonah was in the belly of the beast, but yet again he looked toward the holy temple, the universal law, the clouds of heaven. So now, then the waters compassed me about, even unto the soul. The depths closed me round about, the weeds were wrapped upon my head. Meaning that there was no universal law circulating in his mind. He was in the wilderness of sin. The child was in the wilderness of sin. Those thorns that you see on the head of Jesus, hanging on the cross, that symbolizes there was no universal light, the night vision. That symbolizes the sun, moon, and stars being taken away from the earth. A time of darkness, conflict and emotions, where the child, there was no universal light that was able to enter that child's mind at that time. Okay now. And I went down to the bottom of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came unto thee and to thy holy temple. So now, let me check my device. Yeah, we good. So now, Jonah was in the wilderness of sin. Jonah was cast into the belly of the beast. The child in Revelation had to flee into the wilderness of sin. Mary and her child had to flee by night in a night vision into Egypt. Daniel saw the man in a night vision. Matthew seen a time of darkness, conflict and emotion, a time where Islam was taken away from the earth, but yet it's still one coming in the clouds of heaven. Daniel seen one coming in the clouds of heaven at a dark time. In the book of Revelation, the child had to flee into the wilderness, but rose about the wilderness and fought against the dragon with the universal law, with the universal truth, with the will of Allah. So now we got a child that had to come half white and half black. Now this child had to come half white. He came in a likeness of sinful flesh. Romans 8:3. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh. So the child came in the likeness of sinful flesh. The child came at a time of conflicting emotions, sinful flesh. The conflicting emotions that was grafted upon you, the white man. He came in the likeness of that. He came at a time in world history where conflicting emotions was dictating the earth. The earth was dark at that hour. He came in a dark hour where the white man was in power. Conflicting emotions was in power. The white man, the woman symbolizes the conflicting emotions. Master Paul Muhammad, the one that brought this universal law that the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, and what I'm teaching you, come from a white man. It come from a white man that God cleaned up. Allah, the black God, cleaned up and instilled this law into this solid white man, the brain, the lay down as a foundation to give birth to a child that was going to be the ruler, that was going to be the savior. But this child was to come in the likeness of his mother, which is Master Paul Muhammad. He was to come in the wilderness of sin. He was to come in the night vision. He was to flee into the wilderness of Egypt with his mother Mary. He was to come in the belly of the fish, the belly of the beast, a time where conflicting emotions was at its peak and was dictating the earth. This child was to come in that era, in that likeness, at a time where conflicting emotions was dictating the earth, and in an area where conflicting emotions was at its peak. That's how this child was to come. This child had to flee into Egypt. He had to hide in the Egypt. This child was to come. This son was to come in the likeness of conflicting emotions, which is the white man, which is Master Paul Muhammad, the woman. He came in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh. So he came in the night vision. He came in the night vision, and for sin, condemned sin with the universal. He came in the clouds of heaven. Yet and still, he came in the clouds of heaven. Daniel seen one coming in the night vision, coming in the clouds of heaven. Matthew seen a time where the sun, moon, and stars, Islam was taken away from the earth, but the Son of Man was coming in the clouds of heaven. Mary and her child had to flee into the wilderness, Egypt, but the child rose up out of Egypt and went to preaching to the Israel. He came in the clouds of heaven. He was in the wilderness of sin, but rose up out the wilderness of sin and was coming in the clouds of heaven, used the universal law to go to preaching to the Israelites. Jonah was in the belly of the whale, was in the belly of the fish, was in the belly of the beast, was in a time of darkness where conflict and emotions was dictating the earth, and rose up out the belly of the beast and went to preaching to Nineveh. With the universal law, he came with the clouds of heaven. He rose every time a child was in the dark, rose out the dark and went and came with the clouds of heaven and brought the universal law to the people. All the way through the Bible. Even let's go to Exodus. Let's go to Exodus. Cause we getting down to the nitty-gritty about this Jesus thing. We gonna lock this Jesus thing down. We gonna wrap it up. Wrap it all up. Let's go to Exodus. Exodus 14. 15 to 22. Now, and the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me, speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward, but lift up thy rod, and stretch out thy hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry land through the midst of the sea. And now behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And they shall follow them, and I will get me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon all his hosts, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. Now, and the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went before their face, and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud of darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that one came not near the other one all that night. So now, it said that it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud of darkness. There go the darkness again, the night vision. The time where the sun, moon, and stars was dry. The time where the child had to flee into Egypt. Where Jonah was in the belly of the fish, the belly of the beast. A time of where conflict and emotions was dictating earth. Darkness, material matter. So it was a cloud of darkness to them, but it gave light. It gave light. It gave universal law. It gave universal truth. It came in the clouds of heaven. The same way Daniel seen them in the night vision, coming in the clouds of heaven. Matthew seen the sun, moon, and stars that was dark, but the Son of Man came in the clouds of heaven. Mary had to flee in the darkness, and her child had to flee in the darkness, but rose up out the darkness and to the clouds of heaven, universal law, and went to preaching to the Israelites. Jonah was in the belly of the beast, rose up out the belly of the beast, and came in the clouds of heaven and went to preaching in Nineveh. So now, let us move on. We getting hot now, man. We get down to the get down. Let's go to Job. Let's go to Job. Let's go to the book of Job. Job. Now we go to Job. Okay, here we go. Job, chapter 2, verse 1 through 11. Blow ye the trumpet of Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is night at hand, a day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and strong, there have never been the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. And the fire devoured before them, behind them a flame burneth before them, a flame burneth. The land is as the garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, and nothing shall escape them. So now Joel is seeing the same thing that Jonah seen, that Daniel seen, that Matthew seen, that Revelation talks about. They seen the night vision, a time of darkness, a time where Islam was to be taken away from the earth, when there was going to be very little universal law taught, where the earth was going to be dry. That a child was coming at a time where universal law was dry, where the body of emotions, those conflicting emotions, was dictating the earth, and Islam was swept up under the rug. So Joel seen a day of thick darkness, night vision, same thing Daniel seen. The same thing Jonah prophesied of, being in the belly of the fish, a time of darkness. Now Joel seen that a time of thick darkness, and it says that a fire devoured before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them. The Garden of Eden, universal law, universal truth, the clouds of heaven. Remember, Daniel was seeing the night vision, seeing the sun coming in the clouds of heaven, but Daniel seen the night vision first though. But the child was coming in the clouds of heaven. Okay, the Garden of Eden, the clouds of heaven, symbolizes universal truth. That's the will of Allah. That's the righteous creative energy that the black nation has the nature to connect with, that would enable them to live a peaceful life. That's the Garden of Eden. Universal law, the will of Allah. Islam, as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Islam that was laid at the foundation of the universe 78 trillion years ago, when that first man came up out that atom and went to defining the universe. When that power touched him, he gave definition to everything that was around him. He brought forth a universal law. That's the Garden of Eden. That's the law that Wallace Muhammad, the woman, was cleaned up and was given a portion of that law to get us, to give birth to a child. That's the Garden of Eden. Universal truth and righteousness, as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So now Joel seen a day of darkness. Joel seen a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness. And then Joel says that the land was like the Garden of Eden before them. In front of them was a land of the Garden of Eden, a child bringing forth, coming in the clouds of heaven. The Savior coming in the clouds of heaven, universal law. But behind them was a desolate wilderness, the wilderness of sin, conflicting emotions, a day of darkness, a time where all these different emotions was dictating the earth, where the white man thinking was at its peak, was at its apex, was at its pinnacle. This is what George seen. George seen the same thing that Daniel seen. George seen the same thing that Matthew seen. A time where Islam was taken away from the earth, and the earth was dark with conflicting emotions. Wickedness going on, dope on every corner, murdering going on, raping going on, drugs on every corner. A time of darkness where conflicting emotions was dictating the earth. Now George seen the same thing Daniel seen. But George says that behind them, in front of them was the Garden of Eden, a sun coming in the clouds of heaven, but behind them was the desolate wilderness. The wilderness of sin. Now let us move on. Now y'all see how all this is connected now. I'm connecting the darkness with the light. The darkness symbolizes the white man and his conflicting emotions. That triple stages of darkness. That last stage that was grafted up out of us, which is our emotions that's dictating the earth. All these conflicting emotions trampling all over each other. Jealousy, hate, greed, and envy. All these different emotions just trampling over each other. Can't nobody get along out here. Because conflicting emotions is what's in power. The white man. And there was a child that was prophesied to come in the likeness of that. Had to flee into the wilderness. Now let us move on. If we go back to the book of Isaiah. Let's go back to the book of Isaiah 53. Now, Isaiah, I explained to y'all before, in part 1 I think it was. Isaiah says that, who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed. For he, this is talking about the child, the Son of Man, the Jesus, the Savior, the Messiah, the MAHDI, or AHMAD, or whatever you want to call it. Okay? And for he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as the root out of a dry ground. He has no form, no comeliness, and you shall see him. There is no beauty that we should desire him. So this child was to come the same as Jonah, the same that Daniel, the night vision, the same that Matthew seen when Islam was taken away from the earth, a time of darkness, the same as George seen, a day of thick darkness. George seen a day of thick darkness. Jonah said that he was in the belly of the beast, a time of evil and wickedness. If we go to Job, back to Job, go back to Job, Jonah, Jonah say, and I cried for reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me out of the belly of hell. I cried, and thou heard, for thou hast cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods compassed me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then I said, I am cast out of thy sight, yet will I look again toward thy holy temple. So now, change my device. Okay. So now, for he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. Darkness, wickedness of sin. Okay, and he is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, and acquainted with grief. And we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgression. He was bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace was upon him. With his stripes we are healed. So now, this is a child that was to come upon the affliction. A child that had to flee into the wilderness This is a child that had to come like his mother. Conflicting emotions. This is a child that had to come in the likeness of sinful flesh. He had to flee in the wilderness. He had to be seen in the night vision. He had to come at a time where Islam's universal law was dry. This is a child that had to go through all type of conflict and hell. Had to come up out of pure hell. This is a child that was hung up on the cross, what symbolizes death, a spiritual death, with thorns on his head. Well, no universal light could come in his head, come into his mind and enlighten his mind. This is a child that was hung up on the cross, had to grow up in affliction, had to be thrown into the belly of the beast. Why did this child had to come in an era of where conflict and emotions was dictating the earth, a time of darkness, like sinful flesh? Why? Ask yourself why. Let us ask ourselves why. And Isaiah says that he is despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, and he has borne our griefs. He was wounded for our transgression. He was bruised. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone his own way. Okay, then it said he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare this generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken, and he made his grave with the wicked, wilderness of sin, total darkness. And because he had done no violence, neither was there any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He has put him to grief. When thou make see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure, and prolong his days. Oh, yes, prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see of the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many. So this is a child that had to be afflicted. He had to be, he was seen in a night vision. He had to come at a time where the sun, moon, and stars was taken away from the earth. And conflicting emotions was dictating the earth. This is a child that was in the belly of the beast, in the wilderness of sin. A child that had to flee into the wilderness of sin. This is a child that Mary and her child had to flee into Egypt, in the wilderness of sin. He had to grow up in the wilderness of sin, but yet that universal law, the universal truth, the will of Allah had to touch that child away from the nation of Islam. The universal law had to touch that child when that child was in the wilderness of sin, when that child was in the belly of the beast. This child was not in the Islamic congregation. This child was not amongst righteous Islamic Muslims. This child was in the wilderness. This child was wandering in the wilderness, like John the Baptist. In the scripture, it says John the Baptist was crying in the wilderness. This child was in the wilderness. But the light touched the child when the child was in the wilderness of sin. This child rose from out the wilderness, up out of time of darkness. This child rose from a era in history where conflict and emotions was at its pinnacle. He rose out of that when he was in the wilderness and was seen coming in the clouds of heaven. Was seen coming when the universal law, to use that universal law, to use that will of Allah, to use that universal truth, to use that foundation to wake up other people as a salvation for all the nations. Now let's move on. Now, how will we interpret a child rising up out of cloud of darkness into the universal light? What is the meaning of it? What is the meaning of it? What is the meaning of a child rising up out the dark and into the light? Okay, if we go to if we go to page 183 of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our Savior has arrived. Our Savior has arrived by Elijah Muhammad. Page 183. Elijah Muhammad says that the Son of Man spoken of as coming in the last days is the son of original man. Therefore, they have it right when they say he is the Son of Man. That is the original man, the black man, the great MAHDI, the God and judge who is now present in the world, Master Muhammad, to whom praises I do forever, taught me that his father was a real black man. His father went up into the mountains, governments of the Caucasians, picking out a white woman to marry, so that she would give birth to a son looking white, but yet the father is black. Okay? So now, he said, this make the preachers of the Christians that is a made man to take the burden of seeking the lost and found people from out of the midst of their captives, who are white. He will do this work in a day that they least expected. Therefore, the Bible says that he came without observation as a thief in the night, a night of spiritual darkness. 1 Thessalonians 5:2. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us on page 183 of Our Savior Has Arrived, he says that the great MAHDI, the father was a real black man, and his father went up through the mountains, the governments of the Caucasians, picking out a white woman. Master Muhammad, the one that taught Elijah Muhammad, a woman to marry. So the father married the woman. Master Muhammad, the solid white man. This is a spiritual bondage. This is a spiritual marriage, not a physical marriage. So the father, universal law, creative energy, righteous creative energy, Allah, married the white woman. Married the white woman, impregnated the white woman with the universal law, and the white woman, which is Master Muhammad, the man that taught Elijah Muhammad for 3.5 years, gave birth, laid that universal law down to the people, and gave birth to a man-child, to a child. Now, the child mother, which was Master Muhammad, was white, solid white man. That's the one Allah married. Allah gave a spiritual union with. Came into a spiritual marriage, a spiritual bond with. And still cleaned the white man up. And instilled a portion of his universal law to teach Elijah Muhammad. And Elijah Muhammad gave that universal law to us and gave birth to a child. And this child was to come looking like the mother, was to grow up in a time where conflict and emotion was at its pinnacle. This child was to come in the wilderness of sin, Egypt, a time of darkness in the night vision, a time where the sun, moon, and stars, Islam was dry. Well, a time where Farrakhan had them dried up the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Let me check my device. Okay, we good. So now, this child was to come in the likeness of his mother, which is Master Muhammad, the solid white man, but yet and still the father, the universal law, the clouds of heaven, was black. Universal law is the righteous creative energy that works through the black nation. That's our nature. That's the nature of every black man and woman on this earth. Universal law, righteous creative energy. The universal law, the power that governs the universe. The power that keeps the 9 planets rotating around the sun at the rate of 1,037 miles per hour. 1/3 miles per hour. That's universal power. That's the power that channels itself through the air that we breathe. That's the power that all black people got the nature to connect with. Because all black people come up out that atom of darkness. That power took that atom out the dark and moved that atom into motion, rotating itself, evolving in the 4 elements. And from those 4 elements, a black man came into existence. So that's our nature. Nature of a black man is righteous creative energy. So that child, father was black. The father is righteous creative energy. The black father is the will of Allah. The black father is the definition of the creation that was laid at the foundation of the creation some 78 trillion years ago. So the child father was a black man, yet the mother that laid that universal law down was a solid white man, Master Muhammad. So the child had to come in the likeness of simple flesh in order to condemn sin in the flesh. So he had to come in a time of darkness, but yet and still he had to condemn sin with delight. He came half and half. The child mother was white, but yet and still the father was a solid black man. Universal law, righteous creative energy. Y'all pay attention. You gonna learn this day. You gonna learn this day the true understanding of Jesus. So now let us move on. Let us move on. We ain't got much time. We ain't got much time. So now, where we at? Now, let's just sum it all up. I mean, let's not really sum it up, but let's just go over a few things before we get to the real pinnacle of what I'm trying to bring to y'all. And see what we look like. We ain't got much time, fam. We ain't got much time. Now, we know that Master Muhammad, the one that taught Elijah Muhammad, in Ezekiel chapter 16, the one that came and seen us in the mud, he was a white man. But yet and still he brought a black law, universal law, righteous creative energy. Prophet Muhammad, 1400 years ago, the one that brought the Quran, he was a solid white man. But yet and still, he was the Quran. The Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago. Prophet Muhammad was a white man. He was a solid white man. Allah cleaned him up and gave him a law to bring to the Islamic world, the Holy Quran. This is where we get the Holy Quran from, a white man. 1400 years ago. 1400 years later, Master Muhammad came to America, a solid white man, and was cleaned up and was given a portion of the universal law. He was given the Quran again, and he taught that Quran, that universal law, to Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad gave it to us. But Master Muhammad was a solid white man, like Muhammad of 1400 years ago that brought us the Quran. Each one of these prophets, messengers, was solid white. Came with a black law. Was half and half. Solid white man with a solid black universal law. We know that black people was the original people of this earth. The black man is 78 trillion years old. We've been here 78 trillion years. Check my device. The white man just got here 6,000 years ago. So why would a white man that don't have the nature of righteous creative energy, that cannot connect with the righteous creative energy unless Allah allow him to, unless Allah clean them up and smooth out those emotions and allow him to grasp a portion of it. Other than that, he can't connect with it. He couldn't connect with it if he wanted to connect with it, if he tried to connect with it. The black man can connect with it if he want to. All he got to do is put forth an effort, because it's already in his nature. It's already instilled in his nature to connect with it. But the white man don't have the nature to connect with righteous creative energy. Islam, the will of Allah. So why with a white man, Allah sent a white man to come and bring forth Islam to a solid black earth? Prophet Muhammad, 1400 years ago, was a Caucasian. Blue-eyed Caucasian. He was the body of emotions that was grafted up out of us. Genetically weak. Had no spirituality in him. No melanin in his skin. Go out there in that sun and burn up in an hour. Skin go to bubbling. Ain't in tune with the creation. Because he not from the creation. He not from that dark matter that was in that universe, that light took out the universe and moved it into motion. White man only 6,000 years ago old. Prophet Muhammad 1,400 years ago brought forth a law. He brought us the Quran. Master Prophet Muhammad brought us the Quran and taught the Elijah Muhammad. He was a solid white man. He was a solid white man. So why would God send a solid white man who he called the devil, which ain't nothing but conflicted emotions, darkness, wickedness? Why would God send a solid white man with nothing but material matter to bring forth a law that was here 7-8 trillion years ago to wake up a black man, to wake up his own people? Why would he use nothing to bring up something? We're going to get to that in part 5. Right now, I'm running out of time. I'll see y'all next week. And it's going to get deeper. It's going to get deep. Y'all just elaborate on part 3 and 4. I'm going to let y'all elaborate on that for about a week. And we're going to get more deeper. Y'all just pay attention. Y'all stay tuned. I love y'all. Assalamu alaikum.